All right, hey, when it comes to playing chord progressions, one of the most important elements, it's not a strict rule, but one of the most dominant elements is playing chords that are in the key you're in, right? The key that you're playing in. So typically, most music, most songs probably stay in one key, but many songs will do key changes in the middle of a song. And you want to be able to recognize that as well, because then the bass line, that might be a different bass line in a different key all of a sudden, the chords might change, right, according to that new key. So, but the main thing is playing chords that are within the key that the song is in at that time. So, like if you're in the key of G, you got the G note right here, we could play our 7 modes, which go from, each note of the key of G has its own mode, right? So the key of G has the first note being G, of course. So it's the 3rd fret on the E string right here, the G note, right? That G note, we can play an Ionian mode right here. This is the first mode of the 7 modes, and you might watch other videos. I have other videos that explain the 7 modes, but those 7 different mode scales, you want to be playing chords that are having notes from within those modes that are all within that key of G major in this case. So like on that G note, we could play a G major chord right here. This is just a G major chord, right? We're playing these two on the same fret, and then we're playing this one down here, a fret. So we're just playing a G major, right? It's kind of like an E major down here. Let me get a better camera angle. Okay, there we go. So this would be like an E major. You play it with, a lot of people play it with these 3 fingers, but I'll play it with these 3 fingers often because I might want to go up and make this G major chord or this F major chord, right? So I want to have that bar ready. But overall, it's still the same fingering here, right? We got an E major. Probably doesn't sound perfectly in tune, but so there's more of an E major. Maybe not 100% perfect in the tuning, but pretty close. And we can play that up a fret and play our F major, or F sharp major, G major, G sharp major, A major, right? So maybe the 12-note sequence, but in the key of G major, we have that Ionian mode being the first mode in the key of G major. We would be playing a G chord, for example, a G major chord. That's all notes from within that mode, right? It's all notes from within this finger pattern that makes up Ionian mode. So they're really just the first, third, and the 5th note of the key of G major, which in the key of G major, the first note is G, the 3rd note is a B note, and the 5th note is a D note. So G's, B's, and D notes, G notes and B notes and D notes all make up a G chord, right? A G major chord. Now, when I say a G major chord, that means that the G is the lowest note in that chord as well. So this G major right here, the lowest note right here is this G note, right? So that makes it a form of a G chord. In this case, a G major. I can take this note right here off and make it a G minor, right? Just like I can make G sharp major a G sharp minor, and A sharp major and A sharp minor, etc. So, but in that major chord here, that's all 1s, 3s, and 5s from the key of G major. This one being a 1, a G, right? This one being a 5, a D note, right? And then this one being a 1 again, another G, just an octave higher. So those 2 notes are both G notes. So G, D, G, then we have a B down here, right? So that's a B note making up our 3rd note from the key of G major. So this makes it a full G major chord by having at least one of each of those 3 notes. So 1, 3, and a 5 from the key of G major. So now we're taking a 1, 3, and 5. Then we have another. What is this? This is like another 3, right? And then another 1, right? So just 1s, 3s, 5s, and 1, 3, 5. So any G major chord is going to have those 3 notes in it. I can make it a G minor chord. That's going to flatten the 3. Sorry, I'm going to flatten the third note in the key, which was the B note, right? So taking that B note, flattening it down, it's going to flatten it to a C sharp. A B flat, right? So a B to a B flat. So that's what makes this a G major chord go to a G minor chord. It's taking a B note and flattening it to a B flat, right? So yeah, the G major chord, but also we have an A note in the key of G, the second note in the key of G, this A note, right? What kind of chord would go with an A note in the key of G major, right? Well, that kind of depends. Like these notes that we're all playing right here are the first, third, and the fifth note following from a G in the key of G major. But what's the first, third, and fifth note following from an A in the key of G major? Right? So A is the second note in the key of G major. But if we follow those notes up, the A note is the first note from, because we want to follow this whole step, half step, whole step, half step pattern from the first note of the key of G major in this case. The second note in the key of G major being A. So if we stay in that pattern starting from the G, the whole step, the first note is going to be a whole step, but the second note is going to be just a half step when we're going from the A in the key of G major, right? So going from the A to the B, right? And then the C note, that's the third note in the A Dorian mode in the key of G major, right? So the Dorian is the second mode after Ionian, which is the one we just talked about over here, this scale that makes up a G major scale, right? That makes up a G major chord, right? Now over here, when we're playing this A note, now we're playing the third note from going from the A in the key of G major is over here, and we're playing G major. From the G note in G major, we do two whole steps and then a half step. But from the A note, it's going to be like just a whole step and then a half step right away. So effectively, that's kind of like flattening the third of an A major chord. And an A major chord is made up of the first, third, and fifth note of the A major key, the key of A major, right? So in the A major chord, right here on the 5th fret, right? We're playing this A major fingering right here, like we did with an E major down there. An A major chord right there, right? So that's, the first, third, and fifth note out of the key of A major, right? But that means if we were playing in the key of A major, from this A note, we'd be going two whole steps and a half step. So in that case, the first note would be A, second note would be B, third note would be C sharp in the key of A major. But if you notice in the key of G major, effectively this A and this B and then this C, not the C sharp, are what fit in, right? So that makes it kind of like an A minor, because the third note in the key of A major would be flattened, if that makes sense, to fit into the key of G major. So that means the first and third and fifth note, fifth note of A major. So this is from the A in the key of G major, right? This is the first note, this is the third note, and this is the fifth note on the E note here. So we have A, C, and E. Right? And that makes up an A minor chord. So instead of playing with this note on here, we're going to take that third note of A major key and flatten it, right? And we're going to get the A minor chord. So that's what we're playing when we're playing in the key of G major. So like I said, the first chord in the key of G major is G major, of course. The second chord is an A note. It's based on an A note. Is it major or minor? Well, it's minor, right? It's minor because it has to fit into that 1-3. It's using the first, third, and fifth note from the A note in the key of G major, if that makes sense. So you're just kind of learning how the chords, why they have to be major and minor at different degrees in any particular key. So that's how you want to, if you're listening to a bass line in a song, then you can say, oh, okay, well, if I'm in the key of G, well, if I'm playing an A chord, it has to be an A minor if I'm playing in the key of G major, right? So, like you said, from the A note, normally in an A major, we're going 2 whole steps and a half step. But we're not playing in A major, we're playing in G major from the second note of G major. A, right, is the second note in the key of G major. It's the first note in the key of A major, but it's the second note in the key of G major, right? It's the third note in the key of F major. It's an F note right here. The F major, whole step. Then your third note in the key of F major is that A note, right? See how so the G note, the A note is the second note in the key of G major, right? So, in the key of E major, just this open E note, we go whole step, half step. So we do fall on an A note there, but in this case, it's the fourth note in the key of E major. So the A note is the fourth note in the key of E major. Right? It's the third note in the key of F major. It's the second note in the key of G major. It's the first note in the key of A major. Hopefully that's making sense. You might listen to it a couple times, but this gives you, an idea of the degrees in a key, right? The different notes in a key, which note they are in that key. Are they the second note, the fifth note, the ninth note? What does that mean? That means we went over the octave to the second note of the next octave up, because there's 7 notes in an octave, unique notes, and then we have it repeats over again to make an octave, hence the word octave, right? So if we play from a G note, G, A, B, and this is going 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps and a half step, and the plan is to end up back on a G note, but an octave higher, right? So G, right? Then whole step to A, whole step to B, half step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, whole step to F sharp, right? And then a half step to G again, right? We just did a whole octave in the key of G major because we went from the G note, we went 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. Kind of like the keys of a piano. If you look at the black keys, there's 2 of them and then there's 3 of them. That's what those are, right? So, we're playing in the key of G major, right? The next chord is A minor in the key of G major. We're playing the key of G major. What's the next note in the key of G major? Well, we did the first 2 notes. It's a G and A, and then the third note in the key of G major is B, right? So now if we were to move up each note from the A minor, if we moved up every note, 1 note in the key of G major, every note that we're playing here in this chord, right? If we move this one up, that one's going to go to a B. If we moved this note right here and the next string down, that one would go up here to this note, which is an F sharp note, right? So and this one here would go up to this note, because that's the next note in the key of G major, right? So, and that means that starting from any G note on the fretboard, you're doing 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step to stay in the key of G major, right? Or whatever key you're talking about. Maybe you're in the key of D major. Play from a D note, 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. Now you're playing D major, right? And it all transposes the same. I mean, if I'm playing this G Ionian mode right here on the 3rd fret from a G note, then I can play D Ionian mode, D major, over here, same fingering, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 2, 4, 1, 2. That's the first of the 7 modes. If you don't know what they are, go back and watch and learn the 7 modes, 7 major modes, right? So the most significant ones that you probably would use the most, right? So over here in the key of D major from a D note, if I want to go down to C, on this C note here on the 8th fret, C, C sharp, D, right? C note. Then we go ahead and play that Ionian mode. is C major, right? So anyway, going back to this G major chord and Ionian mode corresponding to it, you know, these are all notes from that Ionian mode, just the first, third, and fifth note, right? Combination of the first, third, and fifth note. So the second chord in the key of G major being A minor. So the third chord being a B, but it's a B minor, right? So if we moved up every note, one note in the key of G major from the A minor, it all ends up being a B minor. That makes sense. And that's the same thing we did over here from G major to A minor. We moved every note that we were playing in this G major chord up one note in the key of G major. So some of them might move up just a half step, some of them might move up a whole step, or either a 1 fret or 2 frets. You know, 1 fret being a half step, 2 frets being a whole step. So, you know, we're playing the key of G major, playing the first chord in the key of G major, second chord A minor. Right? So we know the 1 of a major key, the first corresponding chord of any major key is major. Right? We know the second one is minor now, because we just formulated it, we just derived it, essentially, right? We moved every note up one note in the key of G major, right? Which could be a little tricky, but, you know, I'm just giving you a shortcut, just going right to it. What if the first one's major, second one's minor, third one's minor, B, right? Now the fourth note in the key of G major, and two whole steps and a half step, we end up on a C note, right? That C note makes up a major chord, a C major. To stay in the key of G major, we need to play the C as a major chord. So I'm not taking this little note off here, I'm leaving it on, right? Right? That's the fourth note, fourth chord in any major key, right? The fifth chord in any major key is also a major, right? So 1, 4, and 5 notes of a key, of a major key, make up major chords. Right? So the first, third, the second, third, and sixth chords make up minor. So let's go through the whole thing here. You go major from the key of G major, the third fret, playing this major version of a chord right here, right? So G major, go up 2 frets to the second note in the key of G major, which is A, and then play a minor chord, taking this note off here, right? So it's flattening the third note in the key of A major to make it an A minor chord. That's what it has to be to fit into the key of G major, right? So these are all now notes, and they can see now we didn't have all notes in the key of G major because we had this extra note right here, which right offhand that's a C sharp note, right? C sharp doesn't fit in the key of G major, right? So it fits in the key of A major, but we're not playing in the key of A major. We're playing in the key of G major. We're playing an A chord, an A minor chord, because it has to fit in the key of G major. Right? The third one is minor, is a B minor, right, in the key of G major. The fourth note is the C, and it's major. And we said the 1, 4, and the 5 are major, right? So the next one is the fifth one, which is the D. That's also major. In the key of G major, D is major, right? You'll kind of memorize some of those correlations. But the next chord in the key of G major is the E note chord, which will be minor. That's a sixth. And we just said, I'm not playing it very well, but it's going to be an E minor, which is the same thing as an E minor down here, just an octave higher, right? So a register higher. So it's E minor. So we're playing that E minor down there. That's our sixth chord in the key of G. Now the seventh chord, the final chord in any major key, in this case the key of G, is what we call a minor 7 flat 5, or a diminished chord. And I don't really play it that often. It's kind of tricky, but when you get there to that last chord, like I played the E minor, I'm way up here on the 12th fret, trying to play this little E minor chord. The next chord would be like this kind of thing here, where we're playing from the F sharp note, because F sharp is the 7th note in the key of G. This F won't fit in the key of G major. F sharp does. But we're playing the F sharp note, and then we play this one here on the next fret down, and this one here on the next fret down. So, and then this one over here, a fret back. And the last two I don't remember exactly without getting into it, but that would be like a minor 7 flat 5, or a diminished, in this case, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, right? And these two, I think they have to be pressed on here to give you an F sharp down here on this string, which is the same as this F sharp on this string. There's the same notes, right, on these two strings, unless you got it tuned differently. So F sharp notes, right? So, but yeah, so that gives you that minor 7. You can play it with these 3 fingers here if you want. Play just the first 4 strings. It's kind of tricky to play the full chord there. And there's other versions of it. I don't remember it right offhand, but then you might rarely use that minor 7 flat 5. It's more like a jazz thing, right? If you're playing like jazz chords, you might play like, or you know, or some kind of bluesy thing like that. But like I said, playing in the key of G major now, playing in a different key. Let's say we just move it up 1 fret. Now at the G sharp note. When I'm playing the key of G sharp major, it's all the same exact thing, just all 1 fret higher. Right? Same thing with A major. You know, so it's just 1 fret, 2 frets higher from the G, or 1 fret higher from G sharp. Right? So because we know the 12 notes, and we should know the 12 notes. If you're barely learning, maybe you need to refresh on that. The 12 main semitones or chromatic notes of Western musical nomenclature, I guess you might say, right? So the idea with these 12 notes is that they create the most harmonies, right? They're at certain frequencies that, you know, well, one pitch is, this is an E note, and this one's twice as much because it's also an E note, right? So it's an E note. It's an E note because it's twice as much frequency, or whatever the strings half as much. I don't know every scientific element to that, but you get the idea right here on the 12th fret. We're getting the same note as an open string because the 12th fret is exactly half of the string, right? It's exactly half of the string, so we cut the string in half. We're getting the same note, an octave higher, an E. Right? Same thing with an A note on the 2nd string here. It's A or A. Right? Any of these, this is all, you might already be aware of that. So, but, you know, the main thing is having your starting point, whatever note you're trying to play from, knowing what key you're trying to play in. If you're playing in that same key of the note you're playing from, you're going to start from that Ionian mode. You know that 1st, 4th, and 5th chord in that key are going to be some variation of a major chord. Now, it could be some other variation of that major chord. You know, we want to stay in the key of G if we were trying to stay in the key of G. So I might go from, you know, a G major, but I could also play like a G major 7, which I'm kind of tweaking a note here if you see what I'm doing. So I'm kind of moving that there. Taking, it's kind of hard to explain it, but you can see what I'm doing. I'm putting the pinky up here and then moving these two right down here. I'm playing a G major 7. Right, that's kind of a, you know, jazzy sound to it, right? You can play some good melodies to it. So it's a G major 7. What we did there is we added a note we added the 7th note of the G major scale or key, which we've already talked about. That note is F sharp, right? So we just basically took this one note here and flattened it, which is a G note. So we flattened it down to the 7th note in the key of G major, which is F sharp, right? Because it repeats 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 1 again, right? So that's the reason why the G. So anyways, you maybe get the idea. They were taking a G note, which is the 1st note in the key of G. It's an octave higher, like this is the lowest note in this chord of this G major, but these are both G notes. They both represent the 1st note in that key of G major. These are both G notes. Now, the major 7th from any key is just 1 fret lower than that 1st note. Like the key of A major, the major 7th is just 1 fret lower. In this case, G sharp. But the key of G major, the major 7th 1 fret lower is F sharp, right? So that's what we did when we flattened that G note right there down to F sharp and changing it to this fingering. So playing a G sharp, a G major 7, right? Still fits in the key of G major, right? F sharp is a note from the key of G major, right? So let's we go to this A minor, still in the key of G major. These two kind of work together, right? You know, you can make a song out. There are some songs like, you know, I think Santana does a lot of that G major with A minors and so forth. But certainly many others. But the idea there is, you're going from maybe a G major 7 to an A minor. I could add an A minor 7, adding a 7th note out of the A minor scale, out of the key of A minor, which I could get into a little something else. When I say A minor, I'm not talking, I'm talking about A minor as opposed to A major. A major would be like Ionian mode. The minor, A minor, would be the equivalent of the 6th mode in another key. In this case, that key is C major, right? So every major key has a corresponding minor, and that corresponding minor is the 6th note or mode out, or degree out of that major key. So in the key of G, for instance, if we did that whole step, half step, whole step, half step to the 6th note, right? The 6th note is going to be E down here. G, A, B, C, D, E, right? That 6th note, that's the 6th note in the key of G major, right? So that's the corresponding minor. So I can go right here and just think, well, E minor, so E note is the corresponding minor for G major. So E minor, a chord. I can play the chord, right? E minor. Or maybe over here, which is, it's kind of like an A minor down here open, but it's got the bar chord, and we're on the 7th fret. Down here on these strings, you see what I'm doing there? It's kind of like what we're doing up here with the major chord, but now it's down here. This is a minor chord where we're using the 2nd string as our bass note. Make an E note right there. That's our bass note of this E minor chord. Right? This is also an E note right here on the 12th fret of our E string. We know that makes sense, that tunes together just like we tune down here an A note to an A string. But playing in the key of G sharp major, the corresponding minor is E minor, which is E is the 6th note in the key of G major. Now in the key of C major, the 6th note of the key of C major was that A. And that's the reason why A minor and C major will go together. Right? Whoops, playing minor. C minor, supposed to be playing C major and A minor. Right, they can go together. Now G can go in there too, because they're all playing notes from the same key. In this case, we would say the key of G, right? If I'm playing the key of C, let me see here. G is also a major in the key of C, and C is major in the key of G, so they're interchangeable in that respect. But like I said, G sharp major, right? It's like, I'm sorry, G major, G sharp major, A major, B flat major, B major, C major, C sharp major, D major, E flat major, E major, right? So, or E major, right? Or A minor down here. This A minor, see what I'm doing there? There's 2 on the same fret right there, the middle 2 strings. Down here, A minor, open. This A, the 2nd string, being your bass note for this chord to make it an A minor. You can play the E note too, typically, but really it's the A note that is providing the bass to make that an A minor chord. So, playing A minor, you can take that A minor, and as long as you know that 12-note sequence, I'm talking about A through G, with 3 sharps, 2 flats, right? There's the B and the E have a flat, and the C, F, and G have a sharp. So as long as you kind of know that, hopefully you kind of know the sequence. Like I said, you watch some other videos to get more at the speed of the 12 main semitones, chromatic tones, which is just like E, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, E. That's it. Repeats itself. F sharp, G, G sharp, A flat, A, B flat, B, C, right? It would keep going up, but obviously the fretboard only goes so much. You could go down to the next string. Say there's a C note right there. So So C sharp, D, E flat, E. So we can keep going to the next string. And you know, you gotta think about it. That's why the guitar tunes the way it does, is so we can play those modes. Instead of playing a G major, going up one string in a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, which could be called for in some scenario, but you might want to play those notes in all kinds of combinations, which is what it's allowing you to do in this Ionian mode, where instead of going 2, 3, we go 1, 2, 3. So this will be the same note as this over here, so you can play, or, right, it's a, right, instead of going G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, all the way over here to the 15th, or whatever 15th fret, we can just go down here, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, right? And then we can go to the next and keep going down for another octave, you know, for that G right here. So G, A, B, C, D, E, F, sharp, G. And then keep going. A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Right? So remember, G happens to have that one sharp in it, that F sharp. If you don't want any sharps or flats, just play in the key of C all the time, because C doesn't have any sharps or flats the way they happen to fall with a two-step, a whole steps, three whole steps, half step. That two keys and the two and the three black keys on a piano, right? Those are your sharps and flats that it's skipping. If you're playing just the white keys on the piano, you're playing all in just the key of C, right? But if you're playing any keys that have a sharp or flat in it, then you gotta play some of the black keys in for those on a piano, right? So with the guitar, we don't have that black. We have these dots. It might, you know, but of course that adjusts itself in a way. But overall, the fingering is the same. Like on the piano, you go to a different key, then the fingering is a little different because you got the black keys in the mix now, right? Where with on the guitar, I could just play this, you know, G major, and I could just move it all up one fret, play the exact same fingering, and G sharp major, A major, E flat major, B major, you know, with that same mode, right? Or in any other mode I'm playing, let's say I'm in the third mode in the key of G, which is Phrygian mode. I just move that up one fret, now I'm playing the key of G sharp, Phrygian mode. You know, so whatever that mode is I'm trying to play. So this gives you a little bit of overall encompassing idea of how the chords are derived out of a key, hopefully. You know, playing that first, fourth, and fifth note as major chords, and that second, third, and sixth chords as minor, and even the seventh would be a version of a minor 7 flat 5. You probably won't be using that very much. You know, a lot of times you just play a bass note when you get to that point, but you know, you might, you know, practice or learn the minor 7 flat 5. But you might not use it that often. It's more like a passing chord maybe, because the seventh note in a key kind of resolves back to the first note oftentimes, right? It depends on how the tension of that song is built. But the seventh note in the key of G being F sharp, you know, oftentimes you're going to feel the need to resolve back up to G, right? Or one of the other tonic centers, like the fourth or the fifth. You can use the minors as your tonic centers, right? So you play them from the minor, and let's say the key of G major, the corresponding minor being E minor. Now, maybe you want to use the E minor as your main chord of your song. You know, it's like the first, and maybe you want to go kind of you can do a 1, 4, and a 5 from a minor as well. But you want to stay in the minor pattern, going from, like if you're playing in the minor version of a key, like I said, from the sixth note in a major key, right? So if I'm, like I said, in the key of G major, going back to this open E note, right? You're gonna be playing all notes from the key of G major, right? Still play an E minor chord, G major chord, right? A minor fits into the key of G major, so you just got to remember the 1, 4, and 5 being major, and the second, third, and sixth being minor. That's the main thing out of any major key, right? But like I said, if you're playing in the minor key, those are going to fall on different ones. It's just if I'm in the key of E minor, like I said, if you will, I could say I'm in the key of E minor. Same thing as key of G major. then the next chord in that sequence is going to be that F sharp note. F sharp 7 flat 5, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, which is like, for whatever reason, I don't really feel like it's the most melodic chord, but that's using the appropriate notes in that sequence. So, but the rest of them, though, I think you're going to find plenty of brightness out of. You can play like a real typical 1-4-5 progression or something. Or you can play the 2, 3, and the 6. You just have to play either minor or major. You mix up different progressions. You can play like this G major, then A minor, C major, D major, E minor. You just have to decide on what you're trying to write or compose. But hopefully this gives you a better idea of how, you find the corresponding chord. Remember, if you're adding like a 7, or if you're adding just a regular 7, that means a minor 7th. Right? It's a 7th note out of the minor version of that chord. So if I'm playing in the key of A, the 7th note in the key of A is this G sharp. So a G sharp, anywhere wherever it's at, maybe this G sharp down here, that's a major 7. But just an A7 would be another note lower than that, G. Right, so we'd have to have a G. So if I play this A7 here, I can play A major, you can play A7. You see, that's a G note, just like this G note on the 3rd fret here. So I'm playing an A major, but then I'm adding in this 7, and I'm letting this one drop, this note here drop a whole step down from A to G as well. That's also turning into a 7th. Just a regular 7th, which means from the minor version of that corresponding note of that chord. In this case, A major, right? But if we're playing to play the A major 7 with a 7th note from the A major key of A major, we would go back to doing that other chord we did with the G major 7 over here. Same thing over here, A major 7. Right, just dropping this one A note down 1 fret to the 7th note in the key of A, which is G sharp, and making that A major 7. Right, so the A major back here to A major again. So we did the A major 7 in the A major. Let's do A minor. Take this one note off, make it minor, or you can play A major and A7. Just an A7, which is still the major chord, but adding the 7th note out of the minor A minor key, just called A7. Right, now if I want to play A minor 7, I take off this note again, just like when we're playing A major and playing A minor. Now we're playing A7 and A minor 7. Right, so that one note's different, right? So A7, or you don't call it A major 7, you just call it A7. It's like the A major with the 7 from the A minor key, from the key of A minor, if you will, which in that case is a whole step down instead of just a half step. So that's the reason why we're adding a G note instead of a G sharp. We're playing the A7. Unlike the A major 7, which is adding the G sharp. We're doing the A7, it's adding a G, right? So, or A minor 7, taking the 3rd and flattening the 3rd, and still leaving in this extra 7 here. It's A minor 7. Flattening the 3rd, making it an A minor chord, and leaving in the 7 from the minor. Now, we don't really ever make an A minor with a A major 7th note in there. It just doesn't work, because you probably could, but it's not going to really fit into the key, I don't think. So, key of A minor, going back a note, and then another note, let's see here. If we go A minor is the same thing as key of C, so this would be F and G would fit into the key of A minor. So F sharp doesn't fit in the key of A minor, right? So if you have F and G, then F sharp doesn't fit in the key of A minor. Right? F and G do, right? Because they fit in the key of C major, which is the same thing as A minor, because A is the sixth note in the key of C major, right? Hopefully this is making sense. It's just to help you put the whole guitar fretboard kind of together more and make sense of it, right? So, like I said, go back to G major, right? A major chord, right? So what is this one's a C major chord, right? C note. Just remember what the bass note is you're on when we're playing these chords. Now we can also play this G major chord kind of like, maybe you remember with this G major chord. Maybe you've played this G major, open G major chord, right? You play with these three fingers, it's pretty common. But maybe I'm playing with these three fingers, because I might want to move it all up to G sharp, add this bar. This might seem a little intimidating down here. It's not exactly real easy to play, but G sharp major chord, right? G major chord, G sharp major chord. Starting with that G sharp note as your bass note, just like we did, which is like we would do over here with the G sharp major chord, using that as our bass note. Two ways to make a G sharp chord, if you will, right there. Just like there's two ways to make a G major chord from that bass note. Then you'd also make notes, chords with any note as a bass note, but pretty commonly we would use either the first or second strings because they're the lowest strings. Like if we're playing this note right here, is what this is a D note, so we're playing a D chord down here, D major chord, just like you'd play an A major chord down here, and that makes sense because you go A, following the 12-note pattern, B flat, right? B major, right? C major, right? C major chord, same thing as this C major over here. You notice how they connect because they're both using this string on this note as their bass note of a C note right here. C major open, and C major over here, both using that as their bass note, right? Like I said, it'd be the same down here. We're using, I'm sorry, right down here where we have the D note. Right, we can play a D chord right there, just like we did, you know, an open A. So we have a D chord. Right, so then we go E flat, B, D, E flat, E. It's always in that sequence, right? D, E flat, E. Right, and if I play D minor, I would flatten the third, which is this note here going down to here. So instead of playing it like that, I'm now playing it like that, right? D minor, just like A minor. Right? D minor over here, or E flat minor, A minor, F minor, F sharp minor, G minor, G sharp minor, A minor, which makes sense right here on the 12th fret. It's an octave higher than this A minor. Right? A minor. So, right? So, you notice how we played two chords based off the same, each one based off the same note on each of these two strings. Right? We played this G major right here. Sorry, let's try this. Open G major, which is really, it's kind of like a bar chord. We're just having it open because we're right here. Otherwise, if it was up here, then we'd have to play this bar note right there to bar these open strings. But you know, G major and G major. Right, and then down here, sorry, excuse me. Okay, kind of losing myself here. This is our G note right here on the 10th fret on the second string. Right, so that's why we play like an open C chord down here, playing it over here, playing a G chord. We're noticing that's our bass note for this G chord. Not really this first note, because we're playing from the second string down, G, right? Then we can go over here and play this G chord with that same note being our bass note, just like we did with the C over here, right? So hopefully you can see how those connect, if you will, right? Right? Same thing with the C sharp, right? When I play a C sharp, how would I do that if I'm from a C right here? Well, I'd have to be playing with these 3 fingers. So that way I can move them all up 1 fret and add the bar. Now I'm playing a C sharp. Right? So C, C sharp, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, B flat, B, C again, right there, of course, on the 12th fret, because that's just like the C open. Right? So, C, C sharp, D, right? If we know we're right here playing this D or this C, whatever, we can play that, like just like you play C and then C, we can play over here, D, and then D. On this note here, notice that's what we're using as our bass note. Same thing with the G, and this G, you can play over here as a B, and a B, right? It's just like a G chord. Got a fret back here to bar these notes. It might not be easy for you to play that, but practice. Try it. Maybe you're not playing such a... This is a steel string guitar, so it's not exactly like you're playing an electric or, you know, a nylon string or something. Probably be a little easier to play that kind of chord even. And maybe up here in closer positions where the frets aren't so far apart, you can play it more. In this case, a C chord, 8th fret, C note. Right, or also a C chord, meaning that both of those chords have nothing but 1s, 3s, and 5s from the key of C major, if that makes sense. So remember, your 1, 3, and 5 make up any major chord. A 1 flat 3 and 5 make up the minor chord, or 1, 3, and 5 out of the minor scale. Right. So for, like you said, once again, A major, 2 whole steps, half step. A minor, 1 whole step, half step. Then 3 whole steps, half step, and a whole step. It's just we're starting at a different degree or note in that sequence of 2 whole steps, half step, 3 whole steps, half step. You start out from the second note, then it's going to be just 1 whole step, and then 3, and then a half step, and then 3 whole steps, and then a half step, and then 1 whole step to get to that second note of that key again. Starting from the third note in the key, we're going right into a half step, right? Like key of G, right, major, second note is A, third note is B, right, the fourth note is key, we're just going right into so the fourth note, going from the third note, is going to have to be right into a half step, which is what we call a Phrygian mode, by the way. Again, there's 7 major modes. There's a mode for every key note of any major key. Right, those 7 major modes, I also show you in my other videos. So I go back and browse through them, and I certainly appreciate you watching them. I certainly appreciate you leaving a like or a comment, and hopefully maybe you got something out of it, and certainly welcome me back to the channel. So maybe like and subscribe, and join me for more, and hopefully you got something out of this. Till next time, until the next video. See you next time. Bye-bye.